Okay, let's get into the UV handlers. I'm going to select this treasure chest top. Okay. And you can see that we already have smoothing groups applied to this. See? I'm going to just click smoothing group button. What we're going to do is map it to the smoothing groups. We've created UV elements and we've solved them and packed them based upon our packing settings. Okay. So let's go into duplicate this. Okay. I'm now going to convert these elements into material IDs so that I can then use the material IDs to run through the same process, right? So let's do shift click. Okay. Now I'm going to turn on the custom material ID. Okay. And this doesn't turn on unless you have a material already assigned. So you have to have a material assigned to the object for it to work. All right. You can assign any material. It doesn't need to be a texture. Okay. And there we have material ID colors. I'm going to now 3 for polygon mode, select all, turn it into a blob. I'm going to collapse that. You can see it's a blob. Okay. Now I'm going to left click on the material ID map button, the same as I did with the smoothing groups. And now we end up with basically the same mapping because we use the smoothing groups to create the UV elements, then a UV layout. Then I converted the UV elements to to material IDs. And now I've used the material IDs as the exact process of going to UV elements. So I'm just going in a large circle here, but you get the idea. We can map it by smoothing groups. We can map by material IDs automatically. And there is something built into these functions that I need to mention. There's automatic fixes for inverted elements. That's if your mesh doesn't have any issues. You can have problems with your mesh that end up confusing the system. Because, let me just do this. If we left click the inverted face button, we can see, let's see, left click. Okay, there's no problem. We don't have any faces selected. If I right click, it would fix any that were broken, but there were none selected. All right, and let's just collapse that down now. I'm going to select the, let's go back to this other one. This gray one. Those other colors were a little harsh. Now, if you right click smoothing group and material ID, they both have relax iterations added to them. So for certain objects, you might want to use those. You can test them out on your own. See what you like best. Okay, so let's get a sphere in here. I'm going to turn on material ID override. Now I have this in editable poly. I'm going to load it into the system. 3, select all. And for the sake of the argument for using this, I'm also going to make a blob to reset the UV space. I'm doing this often to give a fresh palette to you guys in these videos, but you don't need to go and make a fresh blob every time. Work on it how you deem is best, right? So I'm going to go into edge mode and select an edge, and it's going to choose an edge that is perpendicular to this edge, then use it as the loop, because that's how that works. It selected this edge, and there we are. You can see that the UV mapping becomes squished near the top and the bottom of this loop selection because it maps it as though it is a hard surface. You see this? All of these areas are equal in size, at least it appears from here, when all of the geometry squares are not, okay? I should say quads instead of squares. So all the geometry quads, right? Now, let's do something else here. Let's make it into a blob again. Let's go find the front. If I can, I'm not sure. Am I right side up or where am I? Okay. So let's select an edge. But this time we're going to right click. Now what that did is the same thing. It takes that perpendicular edge, the way that the loop algorithm works. But you can see that we actually get a relax in here. It's not fitting in the UV space perfectly, so we'll have to go in, select all these faces, and we'll pack it based upon how we like. But you can see that the projection or the layout is better. It's more ideal. Another thing we can do here, and this is interesting to mention at this point in time, this button here, spread, and this button here, spread, which shows several elements. If you left click them, they will perform their function with the LSCM solver. I'm sorry, with the solver that you have specifically set as the default solver, which is the LSCM solver. And if you right click, it will choose the opposite solver. So since I have the LSCM solver selected, that's a tongue twister. If I have that solver selected and I left click, okay, select that, left click, you see that that's what the result I get. Now watch if I right click, I'll get the unfold 3D result. And you can tell the difference right away. Now, the number one thing is I had to open the editor so that I didn't experience a crash. So there you go. There's that. But you see that layout? That's great. Okay. So I always keep LSCM as active so I don't have to deal with the editor window opening often. Then if I need to use Unfold 3D, it's easily accessible by the opposite click of whatever I have to find. Right? There you go. Okay. So that's the loop. If you do not have an edge selected for loop, it will automatically select one for you. Okay. And you see how it's changing here? Okay. Now that's just chosen on random. I think I chose any edge out of the middle 70% of edges, something like that. It's just if you want to just, okay, I need to map that. You click something, click loop. Okay, that suffices. Move on to the next. So you get the idea. All right, so next we have SSUV, and we want to go to walk to closest face. We left click. We get normalized but not packed. If we pack it, you can see some of the loose faces or stray over here. So if you just leave it like this, at least it stays where, or at least close to its neighboring faces. Right click will be the farthest face, but that seems to share UV coordinates between different faces. We can see that if we pack it. You see these bright red faces. I'm not sure if they are joined by vertices or if they're overlapping. I haven't looked too deep into it, but you get the point. The left click will do walk closest to face. Right click will do walk farthest from face. Neither will pack. They will just normalize into UV space, and then you can pack them if you like, or you can handle it however you prefer. Next, we have box map. So box map is basically like the other smoothing and material ID. By that I mean left click is regular, right click adds relax. Okay. And it even specifies it's relax with the blue left click. So relax with the blue left click. It's this one here, and that's on the left side. So blue on the left, pink on the right, blue on the right, green on the left, I believe. We'll get down to that later. Okay, so if I choose box map, we're going to get a decent box map, but the primary things to notice is that we are contained in the UV space and we're actually packed based upon our packing settings. Now, we don't have any relax placed into this, so you can see that there's some distortion at certain spots. But we don't have any flip faces. You see how this 8 is angled. You see how these lines are curving here. Watch if I right click. You can see that the lines curve much less because the UV geometry or the UV layout is much more representative of the geometrical space. The relax helps do that. So left click is regular, right click is with relax. And I believe all of these except the walk to face have the automatic fixing of inverted faces. It's listed in the tooltips. Next we have Auto Unfold 3D. Let's go into this. Let's reset that. Now, this is a feature that came along with Unfold 3D in Max 2022.3, I believe. However, it's basically an unsupported feature at this time, as it doesn't have predictable results, I suppose. I'm not sure of the full reason, but I don't use it often. I only use it random times. What we get here with this is the sphere looks nicely laid out. It's been sliced on its own. It decided where to slice it and how to slice it. And that doesn't look bad, but we end up with a pelt seam. I can change this over to pelt seam. You can see we have a blue seam here. Okay. And a blue pelt seam, if you don't know, you have to get rid of them specifically, unless you want them. You know, you might want them in certain instances. But to get rid of them, for those who don't know, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt sometimes. So I've created this button that says pelt seams. If you want to add a pelt seam, you can select some and left click to add those to the current pelt seam, right? You can create some more. Okay. Or if you select no pelt seams, you can right click and it will wipe all pelt seams away. So it can remove that headache in an instant click. Great. Now, you can also do this if you have edges selected and you have them as pelt seams. If you prefer other seams as the pelt seam, you can right click with other edges selected, and those will become the pelt seams and all the others will disappear. So basically, no pelt seams, right click, it clears all pelt seams. Have new seams selected, right click, it will use those seams. It's a little different. You can just ignore the features if you want. It is strange, I agree. Let's go into SSUV, make a blob. You see how we have that? We try to heal it, but we can't because of the pelt seam. Yay, pelt seam. So let's get rid of it. Now we'll go into polygon mode, and now we'll actually make a blob. Okay. Next up, we have the user smoothing groups. To do this, I'm going to box map. Then I'm going to turn elements into smoothing groups so that we have something to work with here. I'm going to collapse that. Then I'm going to just get some more things prepped for you real quick. I'm going to 3, select all, turn that back into a blob. Brilliant. Okay, so now we have a blob. I'm going to open up the user UV for smoothing groups tool, the helper tool. I can actually go through smoothing groups of the object and select them like so. But I need to have an unwrap modifier, and it needs to be in polygon mode. Okay, so unwrap modifier in polygon mode, I can select different smoothing groups like so. I can also get all the smoothing groups for the object, and it will specify the name of the object. So I'm looking at sphere 1 smoothing groups of 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can right click 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can also shift click, accumulate, or alt click and remove. Okay, so what's the point of this? Well, if you're working on something where you say, I see that smoothing group and I need to map it, but how am I going to be able to select all of those pieces without it being a problem? Well, you can go through here and say, okay, there's 4. I want 4 and 2. So deselect 4 and 2. Doesn't really matter if you do or not. Now you know which ones you need to right click. So right click 2, shift right click 4. You have those 2 selected. Now you can do what you like to them. Perfect. Next. And let's get out of that. Next, we have material ID process. This is basically a visual tool. When you enter into it, it creates a duplicate of your object. And we have super sweet Matte ID UV active. The number 1 step already implements the material ID 1. So what we'll do is select some faces here and assign next. Select some faces here and assign next. And you get the idea. Now, if I don't like that, I can select these and make them into a different one. Select these and make them into a different one. And when I'm satisfied with how that looks, I can say to myself, yeah, that's how I would like for those elements to look. I can process that. And that will give me my original object with my working object here, which is named with the appended underscore SSUV copy. And I can compare the two to make sure the mapping is correct. Okay. Did I goof up somewhere? Okay, I did. I know where to fix it. Da da da. We can get rid of the copy. And there is our object that used a tool with colors to help us visually sort our elements. Okay. And using a sphere isn't the best idea, but there you are. Next is the biggest novice tool I created here. So what we're going to do is have an object. And let's see. I'm not sure if I need an editable poly or if I need an unwrap. So let's just get into this with an unwrap. I'll select next face set. It automatically puts me into an editable poly. And it selects the entire object. But I'm going to deselect all of it because anytime I process a face selection here, it's going to be hidden. So this is a way that you can get at hard to find geometry and make sure you're mapping it as you like. So I can do next face set. That's gone. And it's most likely similar to, I don't mean most likely as a guess. I mean, it's most like left clicking SSUV. Okay. So we're just creating sets here. And I'm clicking them one by one because you're imagining this is tough to reach geometry, even though it's not. So now I'll just do this and this. Okay. And I don't need to do the last part, but I'm just going to click process. Okay. Now this is what we end up with. You see that most of it's already looking good and packed, but we have this one piece that wasn't even taken care of. Maybe it's because we didn't add it to the process set. That's possible. So we can just select all of it and let's do a spread and pack. And there we go. Okay. So that is a large novice tool, and I call it large because it's kind of, it might be a big thing to some users. Really simplifies things, in my opinion. Okay, next we have the flatten and the super flatten. Load into the system, select 3, turn it into a blob. We have a blob. Now we're going to go like this. I'm going to make this 90 degrees just to speed this up. We'll hit flatten, and you see here that we have some bad projection. Okay. I did this on purpose with the projection here to give you the example. So you can flatten with lower degrees. There you go. That's fine. Doesn't look so bad. But I want to have this at a high number and flatten. Then you have distortion. So if you move over to super flatten with that same setting, it looks better. Okay. So you can turn off the auto relaxes here and you basically get the same thing as the regular flatten. But you leave this on with the iterations of 45 and it just seems to work pretty good. Okay. That's a different beast in itself. There's some information there in the question mark for you. And what's next? We had that. So we have pelt. Let's just make another blob here. I'm going to turn off back facing, select all of the, let's select all of this a little bit more just to make it strange. Okay, now I'm going to break that off just to have it broken off. Then I'll click pelt. Pelt editor will pop up and we'll start pelt, start relax, just commit it. We're not trying to get anything perfect here. We're just working through things. We place it. Going to select that and pack it. There you are. The primary concern about the pelt system is the pelt seam that you are left with. Let's see here. Turn that off, turn that off. So we're going to go into Edge, deselect all edges, and right-click pelt seams to get rid of that pelt seam. We can turn that back on. I only turned off the checker for the sake of the video. All right, so there's pelt. And then this last one is just the no, it's a UVW map modifier. We don't render it as a preview because we're not rendering anything with UVW map. Right click cycles through the variations that are already listed here, which makes it kind of frivolous, pointless, but you can right click and add that. There you go. That's the setting you like. We can collapse that into the object and then click to load it into the system, which then accesses the map channel 1. And that's what the UVW map with spherical mapping type provided us in the objects information for the map channel. Okay. All right. So some of these are kind of just silly, but you know, I built different things, so I just decided to add them. If you use them, you use them. If you don't, you don't. No big deal. But the primary tools there are great to have. Help speed up the process of using primarily the SSUV feature. Like if you box map something or you material ID it or smoothing group it, or however you work through things.